everyone. Thanks so much for joining me for this week's episode of When I Grew Up. On today's episode, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome my guest, Esther Hong. Hi, Esther. How are you?
Hi. I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely.
So Esther is super busy. She's a busy woman, and I'm just super excited that she's here. Not only that, before I tell you what she does, I need to tell you a little bit of how amazing she is. First of all, Esther was the wedding planner at at David's wedding. I always say my wedding, but it was our wedding.
It was David's wedding too.
Yeah. She doesn't do that anymore. Do you?
No.
Yeah. But she, at that time of her life, she was doing that on the side amongst other things. But she was without her, my wedding would not have happened. I'm convinced of that. Or our wedding, excuse me. I did it again. But beyond that, I've known her for a while. Because if you live in Atlanta and you go to church, Esther kind of paved the way, I think, for a lot of us. And she probably hates that I'm talking like this about her right now.
What are you talking about? Which Esther are you talking about?
I'm talking about you. She probably doesn't even realize it. She does. I know she does in her heart. But anyways, all that to say, with just the many retreats that I've attended growing up in middle school and high school. And I'm just so thankful for your investment into our generation, into my generation. You're not that old, but
not that old.
But truly, I'm so thankful because she kind of coordinated a lot of the retreats that I attended and to make a place that was in an atmosphere that was conducive for us to come to know who Jesus is. And for that, I'm super thankful. But the reason she's here, enough of my talking, is because she is an event manager. But she is the ultimate event manager, in my opinion. And it is actually, I should not say this with so much enthusiasm because it might offend my other guests, but truly this might be my dream job. And I'm excited to learn more about what you do. So, Esther, could you tell me what it is you do?
Yeah. So I am an event manager, like Gloria said. My current company, I joined early 2019. I moved back to Atlanta. And so some people may know there's a white and green shoe called the Stan Smith shoe from Adidas. So Stan is my boss, one of my bosses. So I work for Stan Smith Events, and we do corporate events and some nonprofit organizations as well. We do events around live sporting events. So obviously with Stan being a former world number one tennis player, we do the 4 Grand Slams, which are Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, US Open. And then we'll do golf majors. Our team actually tonight, they're down at the Masters this week in Augusta. And then we'll do world championships. So Olympics, FIFA World Cup, Rugby World Cup. And then we'll do partnership events. So it's having a group go out to do a few days at Pebble Beach or down at Sea Island. Or we did one, I think my 40th birthday, I totally got lucky, but we did one down in Cabo. So, what a way to, enter into the next decade, right?
Yeah. That is so cool. I feel like you're talking so nonchalantly, but I'm my mouth is open for those of you who can't see because I'm so in awe of I love sports and then I like planning things. So just the marriage of the two just sounds ideal. So, but when you say we do these events, what does that mean?
So our main clientele are global and Fortune 500 clients, corporations. Okay. We do, again, like I mentioned earlier, we do have some nonprofit organizations where we'll do donor programs for them as well, events. But typically we'll have a client who would like to go to one of these sporting events. And so whether it's for the US Open, whether it's just setting up one day where they'll do dinner in the city and then we'll transfer them over to Flushing Meadows to go to the evening session of the US Open. It could look anything like that, or it could be an overnight program. So one of our biggest events is Wimbledon, and Wimbledon's a little bit different. So we've actually got a house that we rent out for the 2 weeks that we're there, and every day is a different corporate client. So they'll come in, they'll have catered lunch, and then that house is literally right off the grounds of Wimbledon. And so they just kind of go back and forth all day between the house and then going in to watch world-class tennis. So yeah, you said it would be your dream job. It's definitely my dream job. So very, very fortunate and grateful to get to do what I do.
That's awesome. Hey, a little side note. Is your office in Alpharetta?
It is.
Is it on Maxwell Road?
It is.
Oh my gosh. No, that's
You
so
drive by it?
funny because it's right across the tag office.
Yeah.
And I was driving last week to the tag office and I saw it and I thought, surely that's not the Stan Smith events that you work at. But I guess that's cool. It is.
It is. Yeah.
Oh.
So we've got some of our team that work remotely, and then we'll meet on site at these different events. But then there's a core team of us here in Atlanta that work out of that Maxwell Road house. And so next time you drive by, you've got to stop by and say hello.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's so cool. I don't know why it's cool, but it's cool for me. Okay. What does a typical day for you look like then? I would imagine it's always evolving, always changing, but typically, yeah, what does it look like?
So it would depend on what month of the year it's at, you know. So we with a lot of these sporting events, they're annual events, so we've got a rotating calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And then every once in a while we'll have a partnership event at a different location. So it everything is always kind of revolving of you're planning towards the next,
Sure.
however many events, and then you're on site at events. So we, before COVID hit in 2019 was one of our largest years. I would say if not every month, then every other month we were on site at another event.
Oh, wow.
So it's just kind of that tension of, where we are in the calendar. But a typical day in the office here would be, go in the morning, and then it's preparing whatever you need to get done for the XYZ events ahead. So whether that's, if we're in a marketing phase, then it's preparing decks on, what kind of events we can do for the client, what we offer, what locations we can do. Or if we're in the next step, then it's contracting, figuring out what works best, and then contracting all of that out. And then if it's further along, then it's actually planning out the details, working with vendors for dinners, ticket offices for tickets, transportation, just planning and working with all our vendors. And then if it's the week out, we always do a pre-event week. And then that is the week where it's kind of all hands on deck. And then, especially if we're traveling to a different city or internationally, then it's packing all of our, bags with different gifts or whatever supplies we need to take, everything from portable printers and ink to, gifts, tennis rackets and, other gifts, memorabilia that we would pass out to the different clients.
Oh, wow. So you guys are planning every small detail then.
Yes. So we do everything from the minutia to, the big. So yeah, you get to kind of see every step of the way.
That's crazy. So is your team very big or is it a small?
No, so we're pretty small. We're smaller now because of COVID. But we call ourselves a boutique event company. I think altogether with our contract fully staffed, we were probably at around 10 people.
Oh,
And
wow.
then, depending on the cities, we would have, contacts or contract employees in those cities. So, like in Paris, we'll have a couple of people who obviously are fluent in French. I'm not fluent in French, and so it's kind of like that. In Australia, we'll have a couple of people down
Mm.
there, and so forth. So, um, we've got a lot of people that will come on board to help us for certain events. But I would say full time, we were probably at max, we were probably a little less than 10.
Okay. So do you guys all have your specific jobs, or is it like you guys all kind of do all the things?
So we do have specific rules, but we do a little bit of everything.
Oh.
So depending, it depends on the event. So it's if one person, let's say my colleague Chris is leading on one event, then I'll sub for him. So I'll support him. And then on another event, I may be leading and then he'll support me. And so it's just kind of depending on who the client is, who is typically the main point of contact for that client, and
Mm-hmm,
then
mm-hmm.
also depending on the event, and then availability. So
I
it's kind of
see.
just a all hands on deck mentality, even though we have specific rules.
Okay. And what is your specific role usually?
So my specific role is typically it's kind of evolved because of COVID,
Uh-huh,
and
uh-huh.
so we've kind of had to pick up a lot more things than usual. But typically, it's working with vendors, figuring out, doing the research, connecting with them, looking, finding out where's best for us to go, who's best for us to um, work with. So
Mm,
everything from minutia of picking the florals for a tables, center um, to doing tickets, selling tickets and working with Wimbledon and pricing tickets to sell to our corporate clients, but also to individuals who may want to work. So it's there's, my fingers are kind of dipped into a lot of different pails at the moment. So
right.
yeah. So
Okay.
it's not boring for sure. You're kind of ever evolving. So yeah.
So what is, if I could ask you, what is your like one of your favorite events that you've done so far?
So my favorite event would have to be is probably my first event with this company was Wimbledon. So to be completely honest, I love watching live sporting events, like
Uh-huh.
going to a stadium, but I never watch sports on TV, and I never watched tennis. I was not a big, I think the last people, this is going to date me, but like the last time I was really familiar with a tennis player was probably like, um, what's his name? Chang.
I don't even know.
Uh, that all to say, um, like Andre
I was
Agassi,
gonna
that
say I know
kind of
Andre
era,
Agassi.
Steffi Graf, that kind of era.
That is
So,
kind of older.
yes,
The older era,
a
yes.
little bit older.
Yeah.
None of them are playing currently. They're a little bit older. Uh, but it was amazing to go and watch. Anybody who loves tennis, if you can afford it, then you have to go to Wimbledon. It
Oh,
really
wow.
is like Mecca. And so just, I was enamored with how detailed and how well done they their grounds people set up Wimbledon. But also, my very first match that I got to go sit in the stadium and watch, Stan watched with me, and so he was explaining the whole match to me on how they're serving, what the rules are, look for these little tidbits, and it was just a special moment. Like, who gets to say, Stan Smith
Nobody.
tennis, so that will forever be, a memory that's etched to my mind. Yeah,
Yeah, that's incredible. Man, that just sounds like an amazing perk to your job.
definitely is.
So okay, if you don't mind, so like when you're at an event like Wimbledon, um, like could you give me a little bit of detail about like what it is you are actually doing day to day at the site of the event? Because like, a lot of event managing and planning happens before, but I would imagine you have to make sure things run smoothly day of. Like, what does that look like?
Right. So it's really similar to like planning a wedding, it's just you're detailed in different areas. But so a typical day at Wimbledon will look like we'll wake up, we'll make sure that the house is clean because, obviously that it's cleaned from the day before. We had a different client in. And then all of our vendors will come in, our caterers will come in and reset, serving staff, make sure with transportation that everybody is on time to pick up, if they need to pick up guests in the city throughout London, then they're on time because everything is, obviously timed. And so it's just making sure that all of those details that we've planned up until then, fall into place and work. And so we'll have staff that come in, making sure, even though it's somewhat of a repeat of the previous day, just going over all the details again, make sure that this is taken care of, make sure that this is taken care of, if there's dietary needs, anybody with allergies, you remove anything that has, it will affect any of the guests for that day.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the lunch, what we'll do is our team will escort everybody to Wimbledon. So we'll pretty much take them up into the archway where they go down into their seats, so that it's huge and there's tons of people everywhere. So just making it more efficient, but to make sure that they get to their seats okay. And so we'll escort them over there, and then we'll wait. A lot of times they'll come back in the afternoon after tennis to have English tea. So then we'll do what we need to set up the house for tea, and so it's just kind of an ongoing day of just checking off boxes of, okay, this is next, so making sure that that's set, and the next thing is ready to go. So kind of being in the moment, but always thinking, 2 steps ahead of,
Yes,
okay, this is
yes,
coming. So
yes.
yeah, yeah,
Is it gratifying, like when you see the event just going like the way it's supposed to?
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. There's sometimes a thrill in the troubleshooting, but for the most part, it's, you've planned for months and months and months, if not, a year. Like Olympics would be years. You've planned for so long, and then you get to see it come to fruition, and it
Yeah.
kind of just comes to life before your eyes, where everything was contracts and spreadsheets up until that point. It comes to life, and you get to see, oh, these are the flowers that I chose, and just seeing the little pieces come together like a big puzzle.
Mm.
And then when you see, just, I think the biggest gratification is when you see people enjoy and appreciate what you've worked so hard to, lead up to that point. And so,
Yes, yes.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you mentioned the troubleshooting part.
Mhm.
Now, I I mean, it sounds glorious everything you do, but I also think it's highly stressful at times.
Yes,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, do you get stressed or are you like used to it or
I So lucky for me, I work well under stress.
okay.
So, and I kind of um, thrive under pressure. And so, like, to give you an example, in high school, when you have to take a test and you've got whatever 50 minutes to an hour for that class to take the test, I would typically wait until like the last 30-20 minutes to take the test. And so, just kind of have always thrived under pressure. And so, it's, you kind of, if you've done enough events, you kind of already know how, okay, if this goes wrong, then I can always do this. You kind of have your
Mm,
backups already planned in your head, or you've already experienced, oh, this will work. So you've kind of got plan B, plan C in your back pocket in case something happens.
mhm, mhm.
Um, you would never want to go into an event like one of these and not be prepared. I mean, that
Right.
would be, you know, the worst thing to do. So you've kind of got your best case scenario and worst case scenario going into it. And then that way, no matter what happens, you're ready to pivot whichever way that you need to. So,
Right. And it just occurred to me too, like, I mean, I haven't planned a lot of things, but the things that I have planned, I have like, well, in a church context, right? Like, it's a group of volunteers that are willing to help me. But then I feel, you have a super team of people that everyone knows what they're doing. So I would assume that would be less stressful.
yeah, yeah. It,
But,
but sometimes it's not the people, it's the problem. So it's the
right.
scope of the problem. So yes, it is a lot easier when you're working with professionals
Uh-huh,
who
uh-huh.
have our experience to some extent, and are able to, if not quick to think of what to do, or quick to ask what to do. And so it gets worked out. I think the worst thing you could do as well is um, not know what to do in a situation and don't ask for help and just kind of sit in there. And then, because every minute is time wasted. So,
Mm,
having people who are not afraid to say, hey, this hasn't happened, or I messed up here, what can we do? And then we pivot.
yeah,
So
that's good. That's really good. I think that's good life advice.
it is good life advice. Yeah. It's
uh,
it's that team mentality. So
mm. Definitely. Well, Esther, I was wondering, I had mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast that, I know you from just my church life and growing up here in Atlanta, that you planned a lot of church retreats. And so I don't know, just what I know about you. I don't know you well, but I know that I can always count on you to get things done because that's just who I know you to be, right? In my kind of scope of life. And I'm curious, could you take me back to like the very start? Like, did you study something like this in college or like what was kind of the journey for you? Cuz for me again, it's like I know that um yeah, I think I've always kind of known that about you. Like, why be a wedding planner if you don't thrive under pressure? You know what I mean? Like, um,
sure.
so yeah, could you like take me all the way back and kind of share with me what started you on this journey towards being where you are today?
hmm So, the retreats that you're referring to are Living Water was a retreat that we did way back in the day. And I think it started, so a little background, my dad's a retired pastor. So being a PK, I'm not sure what it's like nowadays. I assume that it's a little bit still similar, but you kind of were given responsibilities just because you're the pastor's kid. And so it kind of started from that. But then at a very early age, if I'm totally honest, I learned very quickly that I like being in control. And
Mm,
so instead of attending in a retreat, I would much rather um, figure out how to do something better. I would see something, whether it's, aesthetics or the actual scheduling or how to do this or that. I kind of just critiqued everything in my head and of
mm,
how can you do this better? How can you do this more efficiently? I think that's kind of just ingrained in who I am. But along the way, um, I grew to love beautiful environments. And so
mm,
um, I didn't do weddings. I only did weddings for that short season for people that I knew really well. And so it was special, but it's I think you touched upon it earlier of um, it's always kind of been a desire to be able to set a place or make a place where people
mm,
feel comfortable and safe, but why not make it beautiful as well? And
mm,
I know how I feel when I see something beautiful, or if there's a beautiful tablescape at a dinner that was set for me, just how special you feel. And so I think just a love for that kind of grew as I got older. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's funny because I actually wanted to become an architect. And so I was planning to do that, but then pivoted, ended up going to UGA and doing business. But it kind of just, events kind of have always been, you know, in the background. And so as I got older, I kind of realized more and more that I really did love doing that. And then just kind of researched and saw that there's so many different events that you could be a part of, you know. And so I think just kind of as I've grown, you know, I've learned what I love and what I don't love, and how to, you know, try to incorporate a little bit more of what you do love and what you do every day. And so, yeah, it's definitely been a long journey to get to this point. And so, but totally love it. And, you know, it's definitely, like you said, it's my dream job. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so I have a question, and so someone else that I had on the podcast, they ended up doing something else with their life, but before they decided to do that other thing, they actually like got like a certificate in like wedding planning or something like that.
Okay.
Okay, and then they said like they really hated it because just like um the bridal industry. I know this is
Mm-hmm.
not what you do, but I have a
Mm-hmm.
question after this. But the
Mm-hmm.
bridal industry is just like so everything was just very like um it just wasn't a good environment, she felt like. You know, it just everything was about like money because the word wedding was in front of it, and like just it just wasn't healthy, she felt like, and it wasn't something she wanted to be around. Um but I feel like when people think of event management or planning, a lot of it does go to wedding because it's just
Mm-hmm.
like kind of in the forefront of everyone's mind, and it's a beautiful thing, you know, and um who it sounds like a lot of fun if you're, especially I think if you're a girl and you enjoy those kind of things. Um but you mentioned that there are so many other things you can do,
Mm-hmm.
and you're doing this now with like sports and things like that, and I honestly I didn't even know that existed. So how did you come upon Stan Smith events, like after this journey of doing planning and stuff like that?
Yeah. So a few years ago, I also worked for a nonprofit as an event coordinator and planner, and it's where, you know, your good friend Christina
Oh yes.
Myung worked there, and so it was back then. It was pre to Passion City Church. It was just
Mm.
Passion conferences, and I was on their events team. So you know, kind of different arena there where it wasn't quite your church meeting. Obviously, they do annual, you know, multi-thousand attendee arena events. So that was a little bit different. In it was planning the arena events, planning the conference, multi-day conferences. We also did world tours back then, and so
Mm.
it was planning my I started because Passion had done one of their stops on their world tour was Seoul. And so they had asked me to come on to help lead with Passion Seoul. And so it just kind of evolved. It was a great time to experience that, you know, how to do
Mm.
world tours, you know, and
Mm.
Passion is really big into music. And so, you know, it's kind of almost like, you know, booking concert tours as well. So
Right.
it was a great experience to get to do these really large scale events and citywide events where even their conference in Atlanta, you would we sell out Atlanta, you know, and so it's reserving all the hotels in Atlanta for the students to come. You know, it's working with the vendors in Atlanta, working with, you know, local administrations to block off streets and just the logistics of getting thousands of people through streets, you
So
know. So
crazy.
so it's, you know, it's kind of where I've really been lucky to get to experience from the small scale, starting with, a church function to the church retreat where we had different churches in the Southeast get together when we were younger. And then that lead into arena events and conferences and world tours. And then, kind of coming back and getting to do weddings as well. And, stepping your feet into that arena. And then now getting to do what I do with sporting events. It's kind of been a whirlwind of getting to experience different types of events and figuring out that, okay, this is kind of a little merge of everything that I've done before, where it's,
Right.
you've got the large scale because it's these large sporting events. You've got the wedding details because you're doing private dinners for your corporate guests at these events. And so it's just kind of a culmination of everything that I've gotten to experience up until now, and getting to use a little bit of, what I've learned here and there, and putting it all together.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just um like correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, I would imagine um working for a company like Stan Smith's events is a small circle. Like, is it like networking that you would get a job like this, or
So it's um, I know that it can sound really cliche to say it, but it really was a God thing. So when I
mm,
worked at Passion, Louis Giglio, the pastor of Passion City Church, is a huge tennis fanatic. He played tennis in school and so forth. And so Gary, who is our president of our company now, he is really good friends with Louis. And so I knew Gary because he would always be on our VIP list for our conferences. And then
mm,
I met him because he dropped off tickets for, tennis tickets for Louis to attend. And so that relation, getting to meet him way back in the day. And then I had actually, when I left Passion, I had actually met with Gary and just to have coffee and just, learn more about what they do. And I knew that he was involved with events. And so spoke with him, but they had just hired somebody back then. And so it's probably been about like 5, 6 years. And so we just kind of kept in touch. And then early 2019, I had just moved back to Atlanta, I think in like end of February, early March. And then a couple of weeks later, he randomly DM'd me on Instagram and was like, "Hey, do you know anybody who's open to, applying for this job?" And I was like,
me.
"I'm in Atlanta." And so it just, within 2 weeks, I interviewed and was, hired, and this journey began. So
Wow.
it just, yes, in a way it was networking, but, that one
Yeah.
relationship from
Yeah.
years ago to lead to what it is now, it's, for me, it's undeniable that God's handprints and fingerprints were, along the way to make this
No,
happen. So.
absolutely. That's so cool. You're so cool. You're the coolest. um okay, so um just a few more questions.
Yeah.
I have a lot, but then I don't want to keep you here all night. Um um so what do you I think you already touched on it a little bit, but what do you like most about your job?
So I, obviously I love live sporting events, and
Mhm.
I love, I'm a very type A personality. So I love things being in order and straight lines, and getting to spreadsheets and being in the details in that sense. But I also love to travel. And so,
Mm.
this job has allowed me to travel all over the world to these amazing events, and just kind of, you know, to get to be paid to do what you love to do anyways is,
Mhm.
is definitely a treat. So
Yeah.
I think all of those things together, getting to be able to be a part of it is pretty
Again,
special.
just a
Yeah.
dream. It just sounds awesome. um, well, you just said just now, being a type A personality, kind of you like things the way they should be. I too, and the exact same. Um, but I was wondering, so like, do you suggest like if say someone is thinking about, oh, maybe this is something I'm interested in, right? But then, um, they are not type A or like they don't do well under stress or pressure, like would you suggest like, oh, you should do it anyways? Like you should just try it or but
Um, I would say, um, I would say, I think um, it would come down to how well you handle pressure,
okay.
because everything, you may not be type A, but you could be very punctual. And if you're
Mm,
very open to learning and, just kind of being um, um, willing to step into any role, I think another part of it is that, yes, there is the glitz and glamour part of what I get to do, but you've also kind of have to have the willingness to humble yourself to do whatever needs to get done to
right.
for the bigger picture, and so
Mhm.
um, I would also say I think you would thrive in this job if you're type A, but I think the biggest part is having a heart that's willing to serve, So
Mm,
whether you're, even if it's a beautiful table that you're laying out, or, the details of making sure, a car service is there on time to pick somebody up from the airport, or whatever piece it may be, it's serving those guests. It's serving the people who are coming that you've set this table for. And so if you don't have that mentality of just enjoying being a servant and having kind of that mentality, then I think it would be difficult to continue to do this, because it's not always glamorous, And so I think you can learn to be detailed, and you can learn to
mm,
be punctual, and you can learn
mm.
to build spreadsheets and read spreadsheets. And, obviously you can learn to um, work with vendors and read contracts and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's you're wanting to set the best for these guests, and wanting to serve them. So it's your willingness of, it's not always going to be glamorous. You're not always going to be appreciated for it. But it's being able to be satisfied in knowing that, I did my best to set this for this person, and being able to be okay without being acknowledged for it.
Yeah, I mean like obviously you hit the nail right on the head because that's what you do. But I as you were talking, I remembered my experience in the past as a production assistant. And, you're really expected to do all the things, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's pick up garbage or, like you said, and just have that servant heart. And I always kind of thrived as a production assistant because it was similar to my mentality of serving at my home church, It's like
Mm-hmm.
you do what you got to do so that everyone else can do what they're supposed to be doing. And
Sure.
um yeah, I mean, the behind the scenes people are literally doing the grunt work
Mm-hmm.
so that the client is having the best experience possible. So
Right.
yeah, I mean, that servant heart I feel like is a key piece if you're thinking about doing something like this.
For sure. For
Yeah,
sure.
that's awesome. Okay, so what is your least favorite part of the job?
My least favorite part of the job. So this is more superficial. So I love winter, and
Mhm.
I don't really like summer,
Uh-huh.
but all the sporting events are during the summer. And so even when we head down to Australia in January, it is summer in
Oh
Australia.
gosh.
So year round, we are chasing summer. So it's the tension of figuring out how to look presentable in front of your corporate clients and not melt in the heat, and, look put together and there and done. And not sweltering in the heat.
That's
So
so
that
funny.
is probably the most difficult part
No, yeah,
of
and
my job
super
for sure.
challenging. I
Yeah.
hate being hot. It's
Yes,
like,
yes. So it's figuring out how to cool off in between, you
oh
know,
man.
and just being nonchalant about it, and
Yeah,
you know,
right. It's like, I'm
step
not
into
hot,
air
are you?
conditioning real quick. What? Yeah.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that's funny, but so true. That would be a challenge. Yeah, and like it's not like you can wear like shorts at a corporate event or something.
Exactly. Yes.
Like,
Yes. Good deodorant, good hygiene,
yeah.
you know, got your lipstick and like a portable perfume with you in your pocket
Oh
to
my
take with you
gosh.
everywhere you go. And so,
Oh,
yeah,
speaking
but
of,
again,
you said lipstick, but I was gonna say, has COVID affected these events at all that you've been planning?
yeah. So for us, and for me particularly, just have been super lucky because our our leadership has been super generous. So
Mm.
our last official event pre-COVID was Australian Open January of 2020. And then
Mm-hmm.
once we got, and even then is when everybody was talking about COVID. We were in Australia for Chinese New Year. So it was a little bit awkward because in the news you're hearing about, this COVID coming out of China, and then you're surrounded by Chinese people. So there,
Interesting. Yeah.
it was kind of, it was there, we saw it, but it was still foreign. And
I
then
see.
we came home and then everything shut down.
Oh
So
man.
for the bulk of 2020, we didn't go anywhere. Obviously a lot of sporting events were canceled. Olympics was moved to this year.
Yes.
Wimbledon was canceled. A lot of other different tennis events, and everything that we had on our full calendar was postponed or canceled. And so we kind of had to pivot. And so we did, obviously everybody loved Zoom during COVID. So,
Yeah.
we came up with different virtual events we could do
Oh
in the
wow.
meantime, here and there. And then we were lucky where there was kind of a window open toward the end of the year. And so we were able to do a partnership event in Pebble Beach toward the end of last year. Um, but aside from that, um, our guys being down at Masters today is the first one back, and so this is this is kind of just a one-off, and then we're hoping to be back on site at Wimbledon in July. But all fingers crossed, because obviously it's us getting into the UK. It's depending on the rollout of the vaccine over there, and so it's everything's kind of TBD, but you're planning as well. So again, you're planning for a worst case and best case scenario. Best case would obviously be that we get to go travel again and be on site for events. Worst case would be, okay, we planned all of this, but we canceled. So then, how can we pivot next? So again, I've been lucky because my team has been able to keep me on during this
Mm.
time. I know a lot of people have, obviously suffered the
Yeah.
past year, and so yeah, so it's been different. Our team is used to being in a new location every month, every other month, and so it's been great as well just to be home with family and get to spend time that way. But
Yes.
we're all itching to.
Right,
We all
right.
love to travel, so we're all itching to kind of use our passports again. So
Yeah.
hoping that it'll happen soon.
Man, that's crazy. I mean, yeah, I mean, especially for something so specific as your job is, and then having literal events, the world is canceling everything, and
Hmm.
um, that's crazy. But yeah, how fortunate that you still get to do what you guys do.
Yeah, for sure.
So when do the Olympics start again?
So they are in August, end of August,
August. That's
end of July, August. So we actually will not go to the Olympics.
okay.
Obviously, Japan has announced that they will not accept any foreign spectators. It'll just be open to Japanese. And so we won't, that's off of our calendar, but we're hoping, like I said, if the UK is able to open back up,
Hmm.
then fingers crossed we'll be able to head
Yeah,
over there. So
man,
yeah.
still so cool. all I can say, really. Um, well, Esther, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely.
Last thing. I
Yeah.
asked this to all my guests before we end our time
Mhm.
together, and that's it. Do you have any advice for somebody that is listening and is thinking, oh, wow, maybe this is something that I might be interested in doing? Oh, or do you just have any advice at all for, just life?
Yeah. I think I would just in general, I think it's um, you I always tell the littles around me as well to dream big, and that's
Mm,
what I did as well, and it's I know that we're in a different age where there's different difficulties and obstacles that come, but if you dream big and you really just have the confidence in yourself to try, whether it leads to failure or success.
mm,
um, you know Not every season of my life has been glorious and beautiful and fun, and
mm,
there were jobs that I did, where there was a season where I was an HR manager. There was a season that I did finance, and I was miserable. Those were
mm,
definitely not my sweet spots. But all of that led up into building me to be the person I am today,
mm.
that allows me to thrive where I am today. So I think it's be patient in those seasons where it just you're dragging your feet. You really don't want to do what you've been called to do,
Mm,
and be faithful in that. And I think it'll allow you to learn the things that you need to really thrive when you do get to a place where you find something that you love, or get to know yourself better, and knowing, hey, I thought I would love doing this, but I realized
mhm,
that I love doing this, and so it's just not being afraid to test the waters and to push your boundaries and to dream big, but also being obedient in the season that you're in, and knowing that there's hope tomorrow. And this is a step for you to, make it up to that next plateau, and where God's leading us. And so, you know,
yeah. Man, yes to all of that because um I will say like, it might seem easier said than done, right, to people that are listening.
right.
Because, even myself in like very recently, I think even parenthood for myself as a mom, stay-at-home mom, it's like um doing things to the best of your ability with excellence, no matter what it is, and being faithful to that. But it's like so hard because there's more, right? But then what you said, just being patient and faithful in the place you are, the season you are right now, and know that God is building you for what is to come and whatever that looks like. And I mean, even what you're doing right now for me is like, I mean, that's it. You made it to your dream job, but then there's probably more. There's probably going to be more, and I think that's so exciting. But, to everyone listening that's in that like season of when is my life going to turn around? Yeah, I mean, what you just said, just trusting that God has more for the next season of life is so hard again, but so true. So true.
Yeah.
Um, well, thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. And
Yeah.
I do need to say
Yeah.
one thing to clarify. Your wedding was so easy because you planned everything to a T. And all I had to do was make sure that this was done here because you had XYZ instructions on what to do. So yours was one of the easiest weddings I've ever done. So you
Well,
give
thank you
me
for
credit,
saying that. It
but
actually means a
it's
lot to me.
it was your wedding because you really did put the detail into it.
Oh man,
So
that's
it
so
was
funny.
fun and my pleasure to do it.
Yes, I mean it. Oh, but I would even like this is just a side note,
Hmm.
um, and I think is a fun story. But like even so you met my mom
Hmm.
when I was in high school, like
Yep.
before I even met David, my husband,
Right.
and my mom owned a wedding boutique, like in a formal wear store. And so I think is the story that she helped with your brother's wedding?
Yes. So your mom was our godsend, like angel from heaven. So my sister-in-law and my brother had kind of planned up to a certain point, and then whatever happened and it fell through. And so at the last minute, she had this other kind of helper planner with her dress and the tux and everything. And we kind of got out of that situation, and it was like literally probably like days to maybe a couple of weeks before the wedding, and we found your mom miraculously. And
how did you find her?
We I don't remember.
Like maybe word of mouth, because that's it's
word
not
of
like
mouth, or we just searched for another like Korean wedding shop in Atlanta, because there weren't that many in Atlanta. And so she and your mom just has this calm demeanor too. Like she wasn't stressed about it. She was super generous.
My mom?
Yes. Yes. Okay. I told you she was a godsend angel. So, but yeah, she was just so gracious and just helping us, even though we were on such a time crunch. And, you know, she helped us, came to the wedding, made sure my sister-in-law looked beautiful, and forever gratitude to her as well for her help.
Wow. So I didn't know the extent of that story.
Yeah.
I just knew that you guys knew each other and things like that. But all that to say, I feel like even for me, that was like a godsend for my wedding. And how I knew you and even the history between you and my mom was just so interesting. Like it's God. It is God.
It is.
But
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. I didn't know the extent. I remember she just told me like, oh yeah, I just helped with her brother's wedding. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, she made it happen. She put the bow on it for us. So
I will say,
grateful.
I think my desire to like, plan things and stuff, and maybe even that's why you guys hit it off too, is like, I get it from her, right? Like, so she loves that kind of stuff as well. So, but yeah, I think, all that to say, I just, even you being here with me and sharing your journey up until now, I know that is, divine, right? It's like divine intervention. So, thank you. I can't say it enough. Thank you so much again. And, hey, so if anybody is interested in a little bit of like planning or events or anything we talked about today, would you be okay with me connecting you with them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So you guys, if you enjoyed listening to our conversation today, or you have any questions for Esther, feel free to reach out. You can DM me through social media, or you can email me at podcastwigu@gmail.com. Thanks again, Esther. Thanks, guys. Until next time. Bye.
Bye.